Welcome to First Reading. Here is Summer Shorts, brief reflections on the lectionary passages that we have for the week. This episode, the fifth Sunday after Pentecost, our first reading text is Amos chapter 7, verse 7 through 17. What is this passage about? Well, in verse 7, God gives Amos a prophetic vision. The vision includes a plumb line in the midst of Israel. And Israel here, by the way, is the northern part of Israel. Now, you may be asking, what is a plumb line? A plumb line is a construction tool. It's a string with a weight on the end that builders use to sort of make sure that the walls that they're building are straight. Essentially, it is a measuring tool. And here God is adopting that as a metaphor and placing a plumb line in the midst of the people to examine them from inside. And what does he find? Unfortunately, it reveals that the people are crooked. The wall is compromised. The wall is not straight. The falling short of the requirements of justice, advocate for the poor and speaking for the most vulnerable among them. And God says through the prophet Amos that I will never pass again by them. Thus, God is no longer letting injustice slide. In verse 10, we get a response to this prophetic vision and critique, right? Amaziah, who is the priest of Bethel, and the priest of Bethel is like the representation of the religious elite of the time, overhears Amos's prophecy and basically files a report with the king. Amaziah reports that Amos is stirring up trouble. He's not a safe guy. He needs to be shut down. He's causing too much trouble. And the worst of it is that he confronts Amos directly in verse 12 and tells him, go back to Judah, prophesy there, eat the bread there. Don't ever come here again. You don't belong here. You're not one of us. You don't have the credentials. You don't even have the license. You don't have the platform. Just shut up. But in verse 14, Amos responds, and this is perhaps what I want to leave with you today. Amos says, I am no prophet, nor the prophet's son, but I am a herdsman, a dresser of sycamore trees, and then the Lord took me. In verse 14 and 15. Essentially, Amos is saying, I did not apply for this job, right? I didn't inherit this because I'm not a prophet's son. I wasn't groomed for this. I wasn't trained for this. I was working my regular job and God interrupted me with a call. Therefore, I became the mouthpiece of God by God's own calling and wish. And the words that I'm speaking, therefore, are not my words, so let me be. This is mind-blowing if you think about it. But here's my brief reflections on this. Is that the people that God calls to speak the hard truths, as we see in this passage, are often not the people with the microphone, right? They're not the people on the center stage. They are the ones outside of the institution. They're the ones outside of the system, outside of the spotlight. And like Amos, they're often told to stop. Like, you don't belong here. They're told that they don't have the right credentials. They're told to go back where they came from. But Amos didn't go silent. He stayed. He spoke. Not because he had institutional backing, but because he had been interrupted by God and God's call. And for that, we have one of the boldest prophetic voices in all of the Bible. So, preachers, I think that this passage is perhaps directly for us more than it is for our congregation. What do we do when our message is sabotaged? When it is dismissed or ignored because it doesn't come with the right title, or it doesn't come with the collar, or it's not credentialed right, or it's not packaged in the right language, etc. I strongly suggest that we take a cue from Amos. That we don't shrink back, that we don't apologize for being called, that we speak even when it is costly. I believe that's what it means to be a prophet and a speaker and a teacher. We trust that the message matters more than the message's credentials and the messenger's resume. And maybe we also ought to ask ourselves, are we listening? Are we like Amaziah, the priest of Bethel, more committed to institutional comfort than divine confrontation? Friends, we have a lot here. And I believe that the spirit of Pentecost is still raising up voices from the margins, from among the herdspeople, from among fig pickers, from among migrant workers and caregivers and survivors and students and people who we don't necessarily consider as being at the center of it all. People who have seen the plumb line like Amos did. and cannot unsee what it reveals, that society is broken, that it's crooked, and therefore they must speak out. So may we learn boldness from Amos, and may we learn the value of truth, not because of who says it, but because it bears the weight of God's justice. That's all I've got for you today. I hope that you stay bold. Thank you for listening. Happy preaching.